Welcome to the medieval world. You are not a king, not a knight, and not even a merchant. You are something more humble, a peasant. And to make things worse, you were born in winter. Your house is small. It has no windows, just wooden shutters. The roof is made of straw. It leaks when it rains, and it lets in cold air during the night. There is no heater, no electricity, no warm water. Only a small fire in the middle of the room, if you have wood, and most nights you don't. You wake up shivering. The blanket, if you have one, is damp. The straw mattress beneath you is hard, itchy, and smells like animals. You're not alone in the bed. Your brothers, sisters, and maybe even your parents all sleep next to you. Not for comfort, but for warmth. Your breath comes out in little white clouds. Inside the house, that's how cold it is. And there are still 3 more months of winter left. You wear the same clothes every day. A wool tunic, if you're lucky. A belt made of rope. Maybe some hand-me-down shoes, but most children go barefoot until the snow becomes unbearable. Your fingers are red and cracked. Your nose runs all the time. You wipe it on your sleeve because that's what sleeves are for. The cold follows you everywhere. When you go outside, your feet sink into icy mud. When you come back in, your clothes are stiff. There is no dry place to sit. No warm water, too. Wash your hands, just more cold. You try to help your parents. Maybe you gather sticks for the fire. Or you feed the animals who live in the same house with you because their body heat helps keep the place a little warmer. Yes, the goat and chickens live inside. And now, they are not trained out at night. The wind howls. It sounds like a wolf, but it's just the wind moving through the cracks in your walls. Sometimes the fire dies while everyone is sleeping. You wake up colder than before. Too cold to move. You just lie there, wrapped in your arms, trying to sleep again. There are no extra blankets. No warm baths, no hot cocoa. There's only you, the fire, and the cold. And most of the time, the cold wins. Some nights, someone gets sick. A cough, a fever. In the 1300s, that's dangerous. There are no pills, no hospitals, just herbs, prayers, and hope. If someone dies, the body is placed near the door, where it's coldest, until the ground is soft enough to dig a grave. Still, life goes. On dawn in the morning, you eat cold bread or boiled oats. If there's nothing else, you chew on a hard onion or sip some weak soup. The food is not warm or tasty, but it fills your stomach at least a little, and then it's time to go out again. The animals need care. The field, even frozen, must be watched. The work is hard, the days are short. And the cold never leaves. There are no warm coats, no soft socks. If you have shoes, they are stuffed with straw. If you don't, you wrap cloth around your feet. It helps. A little. You don't complain. There's no one to complain to. Everyone else is just as cold. Your mother's hands are cracked and bleeding. Your father's face is pale and tired. Your siblings cough all the time. Even the animals seem frozen. You learn to stay close to the fire. You learn not to waste body heat. You learn how to survive, and yet there are moments of peace. When the fire is strong and everyone is quiet. When the goat lies beside you, warm and still. When the snow falls outside, but you're dry inside, that's when you feel safe. Just for a while, you listen to the wind. You hear your mother's voice. Maybe she tells a story to make you forget the cold. Maybe you fall asleep to the sound of breathing and the soft crackle of wood. It's not much, but it's something. This was the life of a winter-born peasant. No luxury, no comfort, just family, fire, and the fight to stay warm. So next time you complain about the cold, remember there was a time when surviving winter was a full-time job. When children slept with animals and boots were rare. When a blanket was a treasure and warmth was a dream. Congratulations, you exist. Please start shivering. In medieval times, clothes were not about style. They were about staying alive. If you were a peasant, you didn't have a closet. You had one outfit, maybe two if you were lucky. And when winter came, you wore everything you owned all at once. Your main piece of clothing was a tunic made from rough wool. It scratched your skin and always smelled like the animals it came from. But it was warm. That was all that mattered. Wool kept heat in, even when it got wet. And trust me, it often got wet. On top of the tunic, you wore a cloak. This was your outer layer, made from thick cloth or fur. The cloak wasn't soft. It was heavy, full of dirt, and rarely washed. It might have had holes or been patched many times, but it gave you one more layer between your body and the cold wind. And then there were your shoes, if you had any. Most peasants walked barefoot in summer, but in winter, going without shoes meant frozen toes. If you were lucky enough to have shoes, they were made from old leather stuffed with straw. The straw gave a little warmth and stopped the cold ground from freezing your feet, but straw doesn't last long. It breaks, it gets wet, and after a while, it turns into mush. Still, it was better than nothing. If you had no shoes, you wrapped cloth around your feet and prayed it didn't snow there. Were no buttons, no zippers. Clothes were tied with string, rope, or leather strips, and they were never the right size. You wore what was handed down from others. If the sleeves were too long, you rolled them up. If the tunic was too short, you just lived with it. Comfort was not an option. Now let's talk about underwear. There wasn't much. Some peasants wore linen underclothes, but most didn't bother. It was one more thing to wash, and washing in winter could kill you. Yes, washing clothes in winter was dangerous. Water was freezing, and there were no dryers. If your clothes got wet and didn't dry fast, they could freeze. You could freeze too. People who washed their clothes too often risked illness, frostbite, or worse, so they didn't wash. At all. This means your clothes were always dirty. Mud, sweat, smoke from the fire, and the smell of animals. These were all part of your daily scent. You didn't notice because everyone around you smelled the same. Bad. Fashion tip. Smell like wet sheep to survive. That's not a joke. Wool, when wet, smells strong. But it meant you had wool, and that meant you were warm. So if someone said you smelled like a sheep, you thanked them. It was a compliment in disguise. You didn't own socks. You didn't own gloves. If your hands got cold, you pulled them into your sleeves. If your ears hurt, you wrapped your head with cloth or fur. Hats were simple, just scraps of fabric tied around your scalp. There were no fancy coats, no scarves. You made do with whatever scraps you had. And remember, your clothes were not just for you. You had to share. Maybe your older brother gave you his tunic when he grew out of it. Maybe your mother sewed your father's old cloak into something smaller. Clothes were reused, repurposed, and passed down. Nothing went to waste out at night. You didn't change into sleepwear. You slept in the same clothes you wore all day. Sometimes you didn't even remove your shoes. If the house was freezing, undressing was risky. So you just laid down, fully dressed, hoping your clothes would keep you warm until morning. And if you had lice or fleas, too bad. You couldn't afford to throw anything out. You scratched and kept going. There were no special soaps, no sprays, no help. Just tough skin and stronger will. Some peasants tried tricks to stay warmer. They stuffed more straw into their cloaks. They wrapped their legs in cloth strips. Some even rubbed animal fat into the fabric to block the wind. It smelled awful, but it helped a little. When you're freezing, bad smells don't matter. In better off homes, people had access to heavier fabric or fur-lined garments. But for most, winter meant cold mornings, colder nights, and clothes that never fully dried. You might ask, why didn't they build better houses or make better clothes? Simple answer, they couldn't. Most peasants didn't have money. Everything. They had went toward food and rent. If you wanted better clothes, you needed better status. If you wanted warmth, you needed to be born lucky. But peasants were born poor and they stayed poor. Clothes were one of many reminders, yet despite the discomfort, they endured. People learned how to layer. They learned how to repair. They learned how to stretch one tunic through 5 winters. They became experts in survival, not fashion. So the next time you feel cold, remember this: you're not sleeping in a straw bed with wet clothes. You're not wearing your shoes to bed. You're not waking up next to a goat just for the warmth. You're warm, clean, and comfortable. And if you smell like fresh soap instead of old sheep, that's a miracle. After a long day of cold work and hunger, you'd hope for one thing: a soft, warm bed. But you're a medieval peasant. Your bed is not soft. Your bed is not warm. Your bed is a pile of hay. In the corner of the one-room house sits the sleeping area. There's no bedroom. There's no mattress. Just a large pile of straw covered with an old cloth, and maybe, if your family is lucky, a thin blanket that has seen better days. Straw is dry, light, and cheap. That's why it was used. But it's not comfortable. It pokes your skin. It moves when you turn. It creaks when you breathe. And after a few weeks, it starts to smell like feet, like sweat, like animals. The entire family shares this space. Parents, children, sometimes even grandparents. Everyone lies close together, not for fun, for heat. The house is cold. The fire is small. Blankets are rare. So people use their own bodies for warmth, sleeping side by side, back to back, wrapped in cloaks and old clothes, trying to trap every bit of heat they can. There's no such TH. This design wasn't lazy, it was smart. People in the Middle Ages didn't have much, but they knew how to use what they had. A cow was more than milk. A pig was more than meat. They were heaters with legs, and they stayed close during the worst months. Don't think about it. You don't have electricity. No heated floors, no chimney, no thick blankets. What do you have? A pig. Not ideal. But when the wind is blowing and the frost is biting, that pig feels like a blessing. There were other benefits too. Having animals indoors protected them from theft and wolves. You didn't want to wake up and find your only cow missing or eaten. Keeping them inside reduced that risk, and there was no shame in it. Everyone did it. Your neighbor, same setup. Their pig might be louder, their chickens more annoying, but no one judged you. It was just how things were done. In fact, kids grew up around animals so much that they barely noticed. A child might fall asleep listening to the soft breath of a cow, or wake up to a rooster stepping on their hand. Life and livestock were closely connected. Of course, not every moment was pleasant. Sometimes the pig knocked over a bucket. Sometimes the goat chewed the bedding. Sometimes the cow left a mess, but families dealt with it. They didn't complain much. Complaining didn't make the fire bigger or the room warmer. It didn't make the cow go outside. You just learned to live with it, and somehow, despite the cold, the dirt, and the noise, people felt safe. Being surrounded by your animals meant you still had resources. A cow meant milk. A pig meant food later. Chickens meant eggs. And while they were alive, they meant warmth. So next time you cuddle under a thick comforter in your clean room, just remember. Your ancestors might have gone to bed beside a cow. And honestly, they were thankful. It was strange, yes. Smelly, definitely. But also life saving. In the Middle Ages, heat was rare. Warmth was earned. And sometimes the best way to get it was to share your home with a chicken when you're cold, tired, and hungry. In the Middle Ages, there's only one thing that gives you a little comfort. Soup. Not the warm, creamy, delicious kind you're thinking of. No cheese. no meatballs, no rich broth, just hot water with whatever you could find floating in it. This was peasant food, survival food. And in winter, it was all you had. Dinner didn't come in 3 courses. It came in one wooden bowl, shared with your family, sometimes even shared with a dog. Let's start with the basics. Boiled cabbage. If you had nothing else, you had this. It was cheap, it grew well in cold soil, and you could boil it until it became soft, almost too soft. After hours in the pot, it turned into mush. But it was warm, and that was all that mattered. Next came root vegetables. Things like turnips, onions, carrots, and sometimes parsnips. They were easy to grow and lasted through winter if kept in a cool, dark place. They didn't taste great, but they filled your belly. And then there was barley. It was used like rice or oats. If you had some, it made the soup thicker. More filling, more like a meal and less like sadness in a cup. Sometimes, if you were lucky, you added a piece of old bread. Not fresh bread, old, hard bread. The kind that could break your teeth and was soaked for hours. You dropped it into the soup and waited until it softened. Then you chewed slowly, pretending it tasted good. Spices? Forget it. Salt, rare meat. A dream. Most peasants ate vegetable soup every single day during winter, over and over again. Same pot, same ingredients, no surprise flavors. Just hot, plain survival. You didn't complain. You were too hungry. Now here's the funny part. They didn't drink water. Yes. Seriously. Most water sources weren't safe. Rivers were dirty. Wells could be full of bacteria. People didn't understand germs, but they knew something. If you drank bad water, you got sick. So what did they drink? Beer. Not the strong kind. It was called small beer, very weak, very low alcohol. Even children drank it. It was made by boiling water with grains, which made it safer than plain water. It gave you calories and kept you alive. So at dinner, you didn't get juice or milk. You got a cup of warm, flat beer. It wasn't a party. It was just normal. Sometimes families would stretch one pot of soup across days. They'd keep adding water, more cabbage, and a few roots if they found them. The pot stayed on the fire all day. It was called perpetual stew. You never cleaned it. Just kept it going. In some homes, there was only one big pot and a wooden spoon. Everyone took turns. No plates, no forks. Just slurping and chewing whatever floated their way. And yes, one potato really could be dinner. Dinner, one potato. 7 prayers. That was a joke. It was life. Some winters were harder than others. If the crops failed, food was short. If the animals got sick, no eggs or milk. If you had no firewood, you couldn't even boil water. On those nights, you sat quietly and hoped for tomorrow. Soup became more than food. It was a routine, a habit, a sign that you had made it through another cold day. Mothers would hum while stirring the pot. Children would sit close, waiting for their turn. Even if it didn't taste good, the smell of something cooking made people feel almost safe. In rich homes, soups had meat, herbs, butter, and salt. But in a peasant hut, meat was rare. You didn't kill your only chicken unless you had to. You didn't touch the pig unless it was a special day. Every animal had value. So you waited. And in the meantime, you had soup. Sometimes someone in the village would share something extra. A small bone for flavor, a pinch of salt, a clove of garlic. That was a luxury. A celebration, a sign that someone cared. Soup connected. People, everyone ate it, everyone needed it. It was a shared struggle, a warm moment, an otherwise cold life. And when the bowl was empty, you didn't ask for more. You knew there wasn't any. You wiped the spoon. You shared a smile. You leaned back, full or at least not hungry anymore. And that was enough. When spring came, meals got better. More greens, fresh eggs, maybe a bit of cheese. But in winter, soup was king. Not tasty, not pretty, but warm dot, and the Middle Ages. Warmth was everything dot, so tonight, if you have a full plate, be thankful. If your soup has flavor, smile. If your drink is clean and cold, enjoy it, because once upon a time, dinner was just a potato, a prayer, and a very tired pot dot cold is uncomfortable. It makes your nose run, your fingers stiff, and your toes ache dot, but in the Middle Ages, cold didn't just annoy you dot, it killed you. Winter wasn't something people looked forward to. It was something they tried to survive. Every year, the cold came back, and every year, it took someone with it. Let's start with the most basic danger. Frostbite. If you went outside with bare hands or feet, your skin could freeze. First it went red, then white, then black. You didn't always feel it at first. But once you did, it was too late. There were no doctors, no creams, no special gloves, just cloth and hope. Sometimes people lost fingers, sometimes toes, sometimes more dot, and if frostbite didn't get you, hypothermia might. That's when your body gets too cold to work properly. You shake it first, then you stop shaking. Then you get sleepy, then nothing. People often died in their sleep during winter. They didn't even know it was happening. The fire went out. The cold crept in. And they never woke up. Imagine lying on a straw bed, wrapped in the only blanket your family owns. The wind howls. The walls shake. The baby's coughing. You try to sleep, but the cold cuts through everything. And sometimes you just stop feeling it. That's the danger. You didn't die of hunger. You died of January. But winter wasn't just about the temperature. It was about what the cold did to everything else. Let's talk about food dot in the warmer months. Peasants worked hard to grow crops. They stored grain, dried herbs, and tried to keep vegetables underground. But by winter, those stores began to run out. If the harvest was bad, winter meant famine. There were no supermarkets, no deliveries, no backup plans dot if the fields didn't grow enough. People starved. And when the rivers froze, trade stopped. Boats couldn't pass. Fishing became nearly impossible. The water that once brought life now turned to ice. Some people tried to fish by breaking holes in the frozen rivers. But that was dangerous. Fall in and you were gone. No second chances. Even animals suffered. Cows stopped giving milk. Chickens laid fewer eggs. Pigs grew weaker. And when animals died, there was no meat, no warmth, no help. Then came illness, cold. Weather made it easy for sickness to spread. Everyone was trapped indoors, family, animals, and smoke from the fire. The air was thick. The floor was dirty. No one washed much, and coughing never stopped. Respiratory problems were common. People couldn't breathe well. They wheezed and coughed for months. Children died young. Old people died quietly. Sometimes someone just didn't wake up. There was no medicine. Only herbs, prayers, and warm soup if you had any. You couldn't just go to the doctor. You hoped your body was strong enough. You hoped your neighbor had advice. You hoped it passed, but winter didn't care about hope. And it didn't care about fairness dot. Sometimes the strongest person in the village caught something small and never recovered. Sometimes the baby who cried all night was silent the next morning. And sometimes it was the mother too tired, too cold, too hungry to fight anymore. January was a thief. And it came back every year. Some winters were worse than others. Villagers would say things like, the river froze solid in a single night, or the fire wouldn't catch no matter what we burned. They burned anything: wood, straw, dried animal dung. Anything to stay warm dot, and when there was nothing left to burn, they burned furniture dot. Yes, people took apart their homes to feed the fire. Cows needed feeding. Wood needed collecting. Water needed fetching. Children were sent out with buckets and hope. Some came back, some didn't. There were no snow boots, no wool gloves, just layers of thin clothing, straw-stuffed shoes, and determination. Still, people endured. They told stories to pass the time. They sang to babies. They shared whatever food they had. They waited for the sun to return, because even in the worst winters, spring always came, eventually. But for many, it came too late. So when we say cold was deadly, we mean it, not just freezing fingers. Not just chilly nights. We mean graves dug into frozen ground. We mean names whispered around cold fires. We mean families left with one less voice at the table. That was medieval winter. No comfort, no rescue, just survival. So tonight, when you're under your warm blanket, think of them, the ones who lived through January or didn't, and be thankful that the cold outside your window stays outside. In the Middle Ages, danger didn't come from dragons or battles. It came from your daily routine. Yes, just getting through the day could end badly. And winter made it worse. Much worse. Let's start with a basic task: fetching firewood. Need fire to stay warm, to cook food, to survive. But firewood doesn't collect itself. Someone has to go out and get it. And by someone, we mean you. So you step outside into the snow, wrapped in every layer of wool and cloth you own. Your shoes are filled with straw. Your hands are already numb, and the wind hits your face like ice. You head toward the woods, or maybe just the pile behind the house. You try not to fall, try not to drop anything, try not to lose your fingers. It's not a walk. It's a mission, and when your fingers start to sting, then burn, then go quiet, that's the warning sign. Frostbite is coming. If you take too long, you could come back with firewood, but without feeling in your hands, or worse, you could fall on the ice, hit your head, break a bone. In the Middle Ages, a broken leg could be the end. You were one slippery step from eternal sleep. Now let's talk about another lovely task: using the bathroom. There was no indoor toilet, no running water, just a chamber pot, a small container under the bed. You used it during the night. Then in the morning, someone had to empty it. That someone was often the youngest child. So imagine this. It's freezing. The floor is icy. You're half asleep. You carry a pot full of, well, not soup. Across a frozen yard, you slip, you fall, you screamed out, the pot spills. And now you're wet, cold, bruised, and probably crying. It's not just disgusting, it's dangerous. Slipping on the icy floor could break your arm or your back. Or worse. There were no hospitals, no quick fixes. Just pain, bad luck, and time. Even inside the house wasn't always safe. The fire could spark and burn someone. The ceiling could drip icy water. A beam could crack. A pot could fall from the shelf. And don't forget the animals. Yes, animals were warm, but they were also heavy. A cow could step on your foot. A pig could knock you down. Chickens could trip. You with their sudden flapping. There's nothing quite like slipping in the mud because a goat butted you from behind. Let's say you want to help your family. Good idea, but maybe not a safe one. Grinding grain meant hours of turning a heavy stone. One slip and your hand could get caught chopping vegetables. Easy until the knife slips because your hands are numbed up feeding the fire. Great unless your sleeve catches flame. Simple things turn deadly in the cold. Even carrying water was a risk. You walked to the well with a bucket. The path was icy. The wind was sharp. And if you dropped the bucket, you had to start over. And if you slipped, well, broken hips weren't just for the elderly. Kids slipped. Adults slipped. Even the chickens sometimes slipped. Water was life. But getting it could take years. Even cleaning the house had its risks. You swept the floor made of hard dirt or uneven stone. You climbed a stool to fix the thatch. You moved pots around the fire, and sometimes the fire moved faster than you. Could breathe in too much smoke. You could get burned. You could pass out. There were no fire extinguishers. No alarms. If something caught fire, you yelled and threw water. If it didn't work, the house burned out, so even keeping the house alive could hurt you. And yet, life had to go on. You couldn't stop. If the fire died, the cold came. If the pot stayed full, the smell grew. If no one got wood, the soup didn't cook, so people kept going. They knew the risks, but they still did the work. They watched their steps. They learned how to fall safely. They knew which animals to avoid when cranky. They helped each other. If one person slipped, others picked them up. If someone got hurt, they made space by the fire and prayed. Survival wasn't about being strong. It was about being careful over and over again. There was no safe job. Even spinning wool could give you blisters. Even walking outside could be your last walk, but people endured. Somehow, they laughed at the slips. They told stories about the accidents. They found humor in the pain. Because what else could you do? So next time you take out the trash or mop the floor and you grumble a little ... just remember, you didn't fall carrying a full chamber pot. You didn't slip on frozen mud and straw shoes. You didn't get kicked by a cow on your way to chop wood. You're doing just fine. Congratulations. Didn't freeze. You survived months of wind, snow sickness, and soup. You slept in a bed made of hay, shared space with a pig, and drank weak beer like it was water. You watched your breath inside the house. You wore the same wool tunic for 90 days straight, and somehow ... You're still here, but before you get too proud, let's talk about what comes next. Spring. You'd think spring would be a time of celebration. Warm air, green grass, flowers blooming, right? Not exactly. In the medieval world, spring didn't mean joy. It meant more work, more risk, more survival. Your body is weak. You've eaten soup for months. You've lost weight. Your clothes are torn. Your boots, if you have any, are falling apart, but you can't rest because the snow is melting. The ground is softening, and that means planting season. Fields need to be cleared. Seeds need to go into the earth. Tools need to be fixed. And none of this waits for your sore back to feel better. Spring is also the season when disease spreads. The fastest all that snow that covered the animal waste, the trash, the decay, it melts. It runs into rivers. It seeps into wells. Water gets dirty. People get sick again. And let's not forget, the food stores are almost empty. This time of year is called the hunger gap. It's the space between the last of the winter food and the first spring harvest. There are no vegetables yet. No eggs, no milk. You've eaten everything that was dried, salted, or stored. Now you wait, and while you wait, you still have to work. Still have to walk. Still have to chop, carry, feed, dig, and cook. The weather warms up, but not in a kind way. Some days are sunny. Some days are wet. Some days it snows again, just to remind you, I'm not done yet. So you wear the same. Clothes now too thin for comfort and try to stay dry. Because wet means cold, and cold means sick, and sick means, well, you don't let your guard down, not in spring. Not ever. Survival isn't about one season. It's about all of them, each one with its own challenge. Each one waiting to catch you off guard. In winter, you fear the cold. In spring, you fear the hunger. In summer, you fear storms and spoiled food. In fall, you fear that the harvest won't be enough. There's always something to worry about. That's what made people so strong back then. Not because they had a choice, but because they had to. Every season brought danger. Every day brought work, and still, they lived. They found small joys in between the struggle. Warm patch of sun after months of clouds, the first green shoot rising from the dirt, the laughter of a child who made it through the winter. These were moments that mattered. Not because they were big, but because they meant you were still alive. So yes, you made it. You didn't die of January. You didn't freeze next to your goat. You didn't fall carrying the chamber pot. You didn't starve on the last spoon of soup. You did what so many before you had to do. You endured, but don't be fooled. The struggle is not over. It never really is. There's always another winter, another cough, another cold night without enough firewood. That's why peasants didn't dream too big. They didn't ask for comfort. They asked for enough food, enough warmth, enough strength to make it one more day. And now, centuries later, here you are, reading this, or maybe listening, while falling asleep in a room with four walls, a roof that doesn't leak, and a blanket that isn't made of straw. Maybe there's a heater humming in the background. Maybe there's a cup of tea nearby. Maybe your biggest problem is that your socks don't match. If so, hug your radiator. Seriously, hug it, because that warm air, that cozy bed, that clean water from the tap, it's a miracle. Modern heating is a miracle. You don't have to burn dung or break furniture to stay warm. You don't have to sleep next to a pig. You don't have to drink weak beer just to stay hydrated. You've come a long way from the hunger gap, from AC floors, from biting winds. And even though life still has its troubles, at least you're not stepping outside at 3 a.m. in straw shoes to find firewood. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, remember, you've already survived the worst. You've made it through medieval winter. Barely. And tomorrow, you wake up in a world with soft pillows, strong coffee, and warm floors. Lucky you.